Rain battered the cobblestones as Genevieve shoved a silver coin into the mud-stained hands of a towering stranger, pitying the poor labourer. She never suspected those same calloused hands belonged to the Duke of Ashbourne, the most ruthless aristocrat in England, or that they would soon lock her in a golden cage. Genevieve Caldwell stood at the edge of the Oakhaven estate, the salt-heavy wind of the Cornwall coast whipping her tattered muslin dress around her ankles. Oakhaven had once been a grand property, a testament to the Caldwell family's legacy. Now it was a crumbling monument to her father's gambling addictions. Lord Henry Caldwell had wagered their ancestral home, their lands, and their very future on bad investments and worse hands of cards. The primary holder of his insurmountable debt was a man the entire county spoke of in hushed, terrified whispers: Arthur Pendleton, the Duke of Ashbourne. Rumours painted the Duke as a monster in bespoke tailoring. He had inherited his title young and subsequently stripped his own family of their comforts to build an empire of industry and coal. He was known to evict widows, crush rival businessmen, and collect debts with the ruthlessness of a starving wolf. And he was coming to Cornwall. Desperate to escape her father's weeping and the oppressive stench of impending ruin inside the manor, Genevieve had taken to walking the moors. It was during one of these bleak, storm-threatened afternoons that she heard the frantic whinny of a horse. In a muddy ditch separating the Caldwell lands from the sprawling, newly purchased Ashbourne estate, a massive black stallion was thrashing. A man was knee-deep in the mire, straining to calm the beast while attempting to free its trapped hoof from a tangle of exposed roots. He was a hulking figure, dressed in a simple rain-soaked linen shirt and coarse trousers. His boots were caked in mud, his dark hair plastered to his forehead, and dirt smeared across his sharp jawline. Genevieve did not hesitate. Forgetting her station, she slid down the muddy embankment. "Hold his head," she shouted over the rising wind. The man snapped his gaze to her, his piercing blue eyes flashing with momentary surprise, before he obeyed, gripping the stallion's halter with immense, corded strength. Genevieve waded into the muck, her delicate hands sinking into the freezing mud as she worked blindly to snap the thick roots trapping the horse. With a final agonizing pull, the root snapped. The stallion scrambled upward, safely reaching the grass. Panting, Genevieve stood up, her dress ruined. She looked at the labourer who was currently staring at her with an unreadable expression. "You are foolish to risk yourself for a beast, my lady," he said. His voice was a deep, gravelly baritone. It lacked the polished nasal drawl of the gentleman she knew, yet there was a strange, commanding authority in it. "And you are foolish to walk a spirited animal so close to the ravine," Genevieve retorted, wiping mud from her cheek, only to smear it further. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a clean handkerchief, holding it out to him. "Here, you are bleeding." The man looked at the fine lace, then at his scraped knuckles. He took it slowly. "Thank you." "I am Arthur." "Just Arthur?" she asked, tilting her head. "Just Arthur," he confirmed, a faint, almost mocking smile touching his lips. "I am a new hand at the neighbouring estate." Genevieve's expression immediately softened into deep pity. She reached into her pocket again and produced a silver shilling, one of the very few she had left to her name. She pressed it into his large, calloused palm. "You must be careful, Arthur. You work for the devil himself. The Duke of Ashbourne is not known for his mercy toward his servants, nor anyone else." Arthur looked at the coin in his hand, his jaw tightening slightly. "Is that so? You know the Duke, then?" "I know of him," Genevieve said bitterly, turning to climb back up the bank. "He is a cold, heartless creature who thrives on the misery of others. He holds my father's debts, and soon he will take everything we have. So take the coin, Arthur. Buy yourself a hot meal at the tavern, and keep out of the Duke's sight. Over the next 3 weeks, Genevieve found herself returning to the boundary line. Arthur was always there, repairing a stone wall, clearing brush, or tending to the horses. Despite his low station, she found herself captivated by him. He listened to her. He did not dismiss her fears like her father did, nor did he look at her with the predatory calculation of the aging lords who offered to pay her father's debts in exchange for her hand in marriage. She began bringing him food-stolen loaves of bread from the Oakhaven kitchens, hard cheese and apples. They would sit on the grassy knoll, hidden from the world. Genevieve poured her heart out to the commoner. She told him of her dreams of seeing London, of her terror of being sold to an old cruel husband, and of her intense burning hatred for the Duke of Ashbourne. Arthur would listen intently, his intense blue eyes fixed on her face. Sometimes, when she spoke of the Duke's cruelty, a strange shadow would pass over his features, but he never interrupted. The breaking point arrived on a Tuesday evening. A violent thunderstorm rolled off the Atlantic, catching Genevieve while she was visiting Arthur. They sought refuge in an abandoned stone gamekeeper's cottage. Lit only by the flashes of lightning, the small space felt incredibly intimate. Genevieve was shivering, her wet clothes clinging to her frame. Arthur took off his dry woolen overshirt and wrapped it around her trembling shoulders. His hands lingered on her arms. When she looked up, the distance between them vanished, driven by the despair that her life was soon to end in a forced marriage to a repulsive baron, and fueled by a rebellious, burning desire to claim one moment of pure, unadulterated passion for herself. Genevieve closed the gap. She kissed the servant. Arthur went rigid for a fraction of a second before a low groan tore from his throat. He crushed her to him, kissing her with a fierce, possessive hunger that took her breath away. That night, amidst the scent of rain and old stone, Genevieve surrendered her virtue to a man with no title, no wealth, and no future. She gave him everything, believing it was the only choice she would ever truly make for herself. Before the sun rose, she left him sleeping. She left the silver shilling on his chest alongside a tear-stained note. Use this to travel far from here. Ashbourne will ruin us all. Goodbye, my Arthur. 2 days later, the doom Genevieve had been expecting finally arrived, but it did not come in the form of a foreclosure notice. It came in the form of a magnificent black carriage, adorned with a silver falcon crest. Lord Henry Caldwell burst into Genevieve's bedchamber, his face ashen, his hands trembling so violently he could barely hold the parchment. "He has summoned us!" Her father choked out, his eyes wide with terror. "The Duke of Ashbourne. He is in residence at the manor, and he demands our presence immediately. He says he has a proposition regarding the debt." Genevieve felt the blood drain from her face. A proposition. She knew what that meant in the world of aristocratic men. She dressed in her finest remaining gown, a faded but clean indigo silk, and rode in agonizing silence beside her father to the Ashbourne estate. The neighboring manor was a fortress of unimaginable wealth. Where Oakhaven was decaying, Ashbourne Manor was pristine. Liveried footmen guided them through halls lined with imported marble and Renaissance tapestries. Genevieve kept her gaze fixed on the polished floors, her heart hammering wildly in her chest. She felt utterly, utterly small. The heavy mahogany doors to the Duke's private study were thrown open. "Lord Caldwell and Lady Genevieve." The butler announced, his voice echoing in the cavernous room. "Leave us," a deep, gravelly baritone commanded. Genevieve froze, her breath caught in her throat. She knew that voice. It was the voice that had whispered her name in the dark of the gamekeeper's cottage. She snapped her head up, sitting behind a massive desk of carved ebony, dressed in an impeccably tailored black coat, a crisp white cravat, and a gold signet ring resting on his finger, was Arthur. His dark hair was neatly styled, his jaw freshly shaven, but the piercing blue eyes were exactly the same. Only now they held no warmth. They were flat, calculating, and cold as glacial ice. "Arthur?" The name slipped from Genevieve's lips as a horrified whisper. "Your Grace," Lord Henry immediately hissed, yanking Genevieve's arm. "Bow your head, girl, forgive her. Your Grace, she is overwhelmed." "She is quite all right, Caldwell," Arthur Pendleton, the Duke of Ashbourne, said smoothly. He leaned back in his leather chair, steepling his fingers. "Lady Genevieve and I have crossed paths before on the estate boundaries. Haven't we, my lady?" Genevieve felt the room spinning. The mud, the torn roots, the silver shilling, the bread she had brought him, the things she had said, the things she had done. "You," she breathed, stepping forward, ignoring her father's frantic grabs. "You lied to me." "I never lied," Arthur replied, his voice devoid of emotion. "I said my name was Arthur. It is. I said I was new to the estate. I was. I had just arrived from London." "You simply made assumptions, Genevieve. Assumptions based on a bit of mud and an unruly stallion." He reached into his waistcoat pocket and casually tossed a small silver object onto the desk. It landed with a sharp clink, the silver shilling she had given him. "Your Grace, I am confused," Lord Henry stammered, sweating profusely. "You spoke of a proposition, my debts." "Your debts are astronomical, Caldwell." The Duke cut in his eyes, never leaving Genevieve's pale face. £80,000. You are entirely ruined. By all rights, I should strip you of Oakhaven, sell the timber, and let you rot in a debtor's prison in London. Lord Henry let out a whimpering sound and fell to his knees. "Please, Your Grace, mercy, I beg of you." "However," Arthur continued, standing up and walking slowly around the desk. His towering height, which had once felt protective to Genevieve, now felt incredibly suffocating. "I have need of something you possess. I require her wife. More specifically, I require an heir to the Ashbourne dukedom, and I have decided that your daughter will provide him." Genevieve gasped, taking a step back. "No, I will not marry you." "Genevieve!" her father shrieked from the floor. "Are you mad?" Arthur stepped into her personal space, his scent of sandalwood and expensive tobacco overwhelming her. He leaned down, his lips mere inches from her ear. "You do not have a choice in the matter, my sweet, charitable girl," he murmured loud enough only for her to hear. "Who else would have you now? We both know you are no longer a maiden. You gave that up to a poor labourer in the mud 2 nights ago." Tears of pure humiliation and rage welled in her eyes. "You orchestrated this. You played with me. You used my pity as a weapon." "I found your pity highly educational," Arthur replied coldly, stepping back to address the room. "Most women in London look at me and see only my bank accounts and my coronet. You looked at a man you believed had nothing, and you gave him your last coin. You proved you are not a gold digger, Genevieve. You are fiercely loyal. Therefore you will make a suitable duchess." He walked back to his desk and slammed a thick parchment down. "The marriage contract. Sign it, Caldwell. I will clear your £80,000 of debt and allow you to live out your days at Oakhaven. But Genevieve belongs to me now." Lord Henry practically crawled to the desk, seizing the quill. "Father, no!" Genevieve cried out, rushing forward, but 2 massive footmen stepped out of the shadows, blocking her path. "It is done, Genevieve," Arthur said, his voice ringing with finality, as her father's signature dried on the parchment. "Take Lady Genevieve to the East Wing. She is not to leave the manor until the wedding on Sunday." As the footman gripped her arms, Genevieve stared at the man she had loved just 48 hours ago. The gentle labourer was a ghost. In his place stood a ruthless titan who had bought her body her future and her freedom with her father's gambling markers. "I will hate you for the rest of my days," she spat her voice, trembling with absolute fury. Arthur merely picked up the silver shilling, turning it over in his fingers. "Hate me all you wish, my lady," he said softly, a dark, possessive gleam returning to his ice-blue eyes. "As long as you give me my heir." Golden manacles felt no less heavy than iron ones. Married life at Ashbourne Manor was an opulent purgatory for Genevieve Pendleton, the newly minted duchess. Her days were consumed by suffocating silk gowns, relentless fittings, and the icy stares of aristocratic servants who whispered about her father's squandered fortune. Arthur was a phantom. He spent his days expanding his coal empire in the study, emerging only for silent, tense dinners. Their nights, however, were a different kind of battlefield. He claimed her with the same fierce, unspoken hunger he had shown in the gamekeeper's cottage. Yet by dawn, the warmth vanished, leaving behind the cold, impenetrable duke. Bitterness festered in Genevieve's chest. She despised his control, his wealth, and the fact that her body still betrayed her with treacherous desire every time he touched her. She plotted ways to escape hoarding small coins and studying the carriage schedules. But her quiet rebellion came to a devastating halt 2 months into their marriage. Nausea struck her during a morning ride. The estate physician, a discreet man named Dr. Arris, confirmed her suspicions with a grave nod. She was with child. Panic seized her. This was the trap clicking shut entirely. She was bound to Arthur forever by the child growing in her womb. When Arthur received the news, he did not smile. He barged into her chambers, his jaw clenched, his eyes locked onto her flat stomach. "Is it true?" he demanded, his baritone vibrating through the floorboards. "You have your heir, your grace." Genevieve spat, turning her face toward the rain-lashed window. "Your purchase is complete." Arthur crossed the room in 2 strides. He grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. His touch was rough, but his thumb traced her cheekbone with a strange, contradictory gentleness. "Do not speak of our child as a transaction, Genevieve." "What else is it?" she cried, tears spilling over her lashes. "You bought me. You lied to me in the mud, stole my choices, and forced me into this prison." "I saved you." Arthur growled, his face inches from hers. "Your father was arranging to sell you to Lord Bassett, a man 3 times your age, known for beating his wives to death. I stepped in. I took his debts to ensure you were mine." Genevieve froze. Bassett and her father said. "Your father is a desperate fool," Arthur said coldly, dropping his hand. "I may be ruthless, but I am not a monster. You will want for nothing, Genevieve. Neither will this child. But you will never leave." He turned and walked out, leaving her shattered. The revelation twisted everything. If Arthur had saved her from Bassett, was his cruel deception an act of twisted salvation? Doubt clouded her hatred. She began observing him closely. She noticed how he funded the local orphanage under an anonymous name. She saw how the estate workers, while terrified of his temper, were paid double the wages of neighboring lands. The monster of Cornwall was a facade, a shield forged by a man who had to be vicious to survive the aristocratic vipers circling his newly acquired wealth. One such viper was Lord Harrington, a rival baron whose lands bordered Ashbourne's western ridge. Harrington was a smooth-talking aristocrat who had long coveted the Ashbourne coal mines. Harrington attended a grand ball Arthur threw to celebrate the impending arrival of his heir. Genevieve, resplendent in emerald silk, felt dizzy from the heat and the suffocating presence of high society. Seeking air, she slipped out to the terraced gardens. Footsteps crunched on the gravel behind her. A tragic beauty trapped in the dragon's lair, a slick voice murmured. She turned to find Lord Harrington, stepping from the shadows, his eyes raking over her form. "Leave me be, Lord Harrington. I am unwell." I only wish to offer an alliance, Harrington said, stepping closer. Ashbourne is a brute. He hoards wealth and treats you like a breeding mare. I have a carriage waiting. I can take you away from him. In exchange, you simply sign over the Oakhaven deed. To me, your father technically left it in your name before the marriage. Genevieve's eyes narrowed. You do not want to save me. You want my father's land to access the riverways. Harrington's smile vanished. He grabbed her arm with a bruising grip. You are coming with me, little Duchess. Ashbourne will pay dearly to get his precious incubator back. Harrington's grip was like an iron vice. The sweet scent of blooming night jasmine was overpowered by the stench of his stale wine breath. Genevieve kicked wildly, her satin slippers tearing the manicured grass. She managed to bite down hard on his leather glove. Harrington cursed, loosening his hold just enough for her to rip her mouth free. "Arthur!" She screamed, the sound tearing through the crisp night air, echoing over the lively waltz music drifting from the ballroom. Harrington struck her across the face. The sheer force sent her tumbling into the thorny embrace of a rose bush. Pain erupted along her cheek and arms. "Shut your mouth, you foolish girl," he hissed, reaching down to haul her up by her hair. "Your brute of a husband is too busy entertaining the lords to notice his little bird has flown. Take your hands off my wife." The voice was low lethal and colder than the darkest winter frost. Harrington froze. Arthur stood at the entrance of the labyrinth. He did not look like a duke. He looked like the wild, dangerous labourer she had met in the mud. He had shed his tailored coat. His white linen shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, revealing the corded muscles of his neck. In his hand, he held a heavy silver walking stick, the wolf-head pommel catching the moonlight. "Ashbourne!" Harrington stammered, dropping Genevieve's hair and taking a step back. "I was merely—" The Duchess felt faint. I was assisting her. Arthur did not speak. He moved with a terrifying, predatory speed. Before Harrington could draw a breath, Arthur closed the distance. He swung the heavy silver pommel of the cane directly into Harrington's face. The sickening crack of bone shattered the tranquility of the garden. Harrington collapsed, screaming, blood pouring from his ruined nose. "If you ever look at her again, Harrington," Arthur growled, pressing the tip of the cane into the cowering lord's throat, "I will rip your heart from your chest and feed it to my hounds. Crawl off my lands. Now!" Whimpering, Harrington scrambled away into the darkness, leaving a trail of blood on the pristine gravel. Arthur dropped the cane. He dropped to his knees in the dirt, ignoring his fine trousers. His large, trembling hands reached for Genevieve, carefully untangling her from the thorns. "Genevieve!" He breathed, his voice cracking. The icy facade was completely gone, replaced by naked, raw terror. He cupped her face, his thumbs gently wiping away the blood trickling from the scratch on her cheek. "Did he harm you? Did he harm the child?" "No," she whispered, staring up at him in shock. She had never seen him like this. "I am unhurt." Arthur pulled her into his chest, burying his face in her neck. He held her as if she were the only tether keeping him anchored to the earth. He was shaking. "When I could not find you, when I heard you scream," he pulled back, his blue eyes blazing with an emotion so fierce it stole her breath. "I thought I had lost you. You bought me," she reminded him softly, though the venom had drained from her words. "I lied," Arthur confessed, the words tearing from him in a rush. "I lied about everything but my name. I did not take your father's debts to buy an heir, Genevieve. I took them because, from the moment you climbed down into that freezing mud to help a common labourer, you owned my soul. You handed me that shilling and you looked at me as a man. Not a title, not a fortune. A man." Genevieve stared at him, her heart pounding. "Then why the cruelty? Why force the marriage contract? Why make me hate you?" Because you deserved a gentleman? Arthur whispered, bitterly, resting his forehead against hers. And I am a beast. I knew you would never choose me if you knew the truth. You would have run. Bassett would have caught you. I had to cage you to protect you. I thought I could live with your hatred, so long as you were safe. Tears spilled from Genevieve's eyes, mixing with the dirt on her cheeks. The monster she had feared was just a man, deeply, tragically in love with her. Morning light filtered through the heavy velvet curtains of the master suite. Genevieve awoke not in her own chambers, but in Arthur's. She was tucked securely against his side, his heavy arm draped protectively over her slightly rounded belly. The events of the garden had shifted the axis of their world. There were no more icy silences at dinner. The phantom duke had vanished, replaced by a fiercely devoted husband. Arthur refused to leave her side. He moved his desk into her sitting room so he could work while she read. He summoned the finest doctors from London to monitor her pregnancy, and slowly he began to court his own wife. He brought her wildflowers, picking them himself from the boundary line where they had first met. He taught her how to manage the estate's ledgers, valuing her sharp mind over her decorative presence. He dismantled his ruthless reputation, using his vast wealth to build schools and hospitals in Cornwall, proudly naming the charitable foundation after her. Genevieve found her hatred melting, replaced by a deep, consuming love. The man who had tricked her into marriage was spending every breathing moment trying to earn her forgiveness. Months passed, bringing the biting chill of winter to Ashbourne Manor. Genevieve's belly swelled with the life they had created in the dark. The estate buzzed with anticipation. Even Lord Henry Caldwell, whom Arthur had forbidden from visiting unless sober, sent a polite, surprisingly humble letter of congratulations. The day the heir decided to arrive, a massive blizzard locked Cornwall in a dome of white. Pain ripped through Genevieve's spine just as the dinner gong sounded. She gasped, dropping her teacup. It shattered against the hearth. Arthur was by her side before the porcelain stopped spinning. He scooped her into his arms, shouting for Dr. Aris and the midwives. The labor was agonizing and long. The storm raged outside, rattling the stained glass windows, mirroring the violent tempest within the bedchamber. Genevieve screamed, clutching the bedsheets, feeling as though her body were being torn apart. Arthur refused to leave the room, defying all aristocratic traditions. He stripped off his coat and rolled up his sleeves, kneeling by her side. He held her hand, letting her crush his fingers until they bruised. He wiped the sweat from her brow, whispering fiercely into her ear. "Focus on me, my brave girl." He murmured, his voice a steady anchor in the sea of agony. "You are stronger than the storm. Come back to me. Bring our child to me." Hours bled into the night. Exhaustion threatened to pull Genevieve under. She felt she could not push again. The darkness was calling her, offering an escape from the relentless pain. "Genevieve!" Arthur roared, his voice thick with tears. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "Do not leave me. I will burn this entire world to ash if you leave me." Push, drawing on a reserve of strength she didn't know she possessed, fueled by the sheer terror and love in his eyes. Genevieve screamed and pushed one final earth-shattering time. The shrill, piercing cry of a newborn silenced the howling wind outside. Dr. Orris smiled wearily, holding up a tiny, squalling infant. "A boy, your grace. A healthy, strong son." Arthur collapsed against the mattress, burying his face in the sheets as a heavy sob racked his massive frame. He wept, stripping away the very last remnants of the ruthless duke. The midwife cleaned the baby and wrapped him in soft woolen blankets, placing him gently into Genevieve's exhausted arms. He had a tuft of dark hair, and as he opened his eyes, They were the exact piercing glacial blue of his father. Arthur lifted his head, gazing at his wife and son with absolute reverence. He reached out with a trembling finger, tracing the baby's impossibly small cheek. "He is beautiful," Arthur whispered. Genevieve smiled weakly, tears of pure joy slipping down her face. "He looks exactly like the muddy laborer I fell in love with." Arthur leaned in and kissed her softly, a promise of eternal devotion sealed against her lips. "And you, my Duchess, are the only woman who could ever tame him." The Ashbourne legacy was no longer built on fear, coal, and ruthlessness. It was built on the foundation of a ruined dress, a trapped stallion, a single silver shilling, and a love strong enough to shatter the hardest of hearts. The ruthless Duke had finally been conquered entirely and completely by the Maid of Oakhaven. The storm outside finally broke, giving way to a brilliant, crystal-clear morning. The sun rose over the snow-covered moors of Cornwall, casting a golden light across the Ashbourne estate. Inside the warm, quiet nursery, Arthur sat in a rocking chair, holding his tiny son against his chest. Genevieve watched them from the doorway, her heart swelling with an emotion so profound it defied words. She walked over, resting her hand on Arthur's broad shoulder. He looked up at her, his blue eyes reflecting the dawn. They had survived the deceit, the enemies, and their own pride. They were no longer captor and captive. They were equals, partners, bound by a fierce, unyielding passion. The silver shilling she had given him on that rainy day was now framed in gold above the nursery mantel, a permanent reminder that sometimes the greatest treasures are found hidden beneath the darkest mud. Did this passionate tale of the ruthless Duke and his defiant Duchess steal your breath away? If you loved this dramatic romance, filled with shocking twists, dangerous enemies, and a love that conquered all, hit that like button right now. Share this story with your friends who adore historical romance, and do not forget to subscribe to our channel for more thrilling, heart-stopping audio dramas. Your support keeps our stories alive. Comment below. Would you forgive Arthur? Let us know.